Welcome to today's episode of Industry Explorers Start Your Career series. We are going to learn about starting your career in performer flying. Thank you guys for tuning in with us today, and thank you guys for sticking around with us. We've got a really good one for the blooper reel. So yeah, for whatever reason, we're not able to broadcast to Facebook, but now everything is fixed right now. Technology somehow can smell fear, and I feel like Jim's got some relatable stories with regards to that. So thank you guys for tuning in. And without further ado, let's get right into it. Today, we are joined by TAIT Senior Project Manager, Jim Shumway. Jim consults on and executes the most advanced performer flying effects in the world for clients such as Disney, the Metropolitan Opera, and Beyonce. Prior to joining TAIT, Jim traveled the world with Cirque du Soleil for 5 years on 4 shows, working on 2 creations, reaching the role of head rigger. He is an annual guest lecturer at Yale University's School of Drama, speaking on performer flying and acrobatic rigging. He holds a BFA from Emerson College in technical direction. He's also the guy who wrote the book on performer flying. So, no big deal. Yeah, there it is. Hold on. I got my copy right here. Oh, and I'm all blurry now. Fantastic. Hey guys, if you don't know me, my name is Siobhan Colleen. I'm a rigger. I don't technology. So anyway, hello, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us. Glad you guys are watching on Facebook and YouTube right now. Jim, how are you today, man?
I'm doing good. I'm so happy to be here where I am. It's a rainy, gray Sunday, so this is much better than looking out the window right now.
Thank God. Yeah, it's a little dull outside where we're at right now. A little bit of rain. Hey, Stephanie, thank you for tuning in. Where are you guys tuning in from? I would love to hear in the comments below where you're coming in from. Salute.
That one's French Canadian.
Hello. Sure. Hey, everybody. Oh, this is a lot of fun. All right, so here's how it's going to go. I do these live streams for high school students and for high school graduates. High school graduates meaning they could be in university. They may be going straight into the workforce. It's all up to the individual. So I'm going to get through a series of questions, and then I'm going to open up for an audience Q&A. So in the comments, you'll be able to write your question for Jim, and we're going to try to get to as many as possible. Wow. Oh my gosh. Hey from Seattle. Hello from Bloomington, Indiana. Hello, Keith. Vegas. I love Vegas. Connecticut. Hello, Jameson. Alan's from London, UK. Arizona, Portugal, Montreal, Madison, Wisconsin. Oh my gosh. Boston, Massachusetts. Barcelona. Gotta say it like that. Rhode Island. Oh my gosh. Oh man, this is exciting. I am super excited. All right, guys. I am not going to flash anymore on screen for a moment. So, who is Jim? Now, I saw on the interwebs that if I did not ask you this question, someone was out of here. So, for that one person or group of people who want to know, what is the greatest curtain rig you've ever seen?
Well, I guess factually, the answer factually is the opening curtain at O. In Las Vegas, Cirque du Soleil's O. It's staggering. It's beautiful. And if the news is to be believed, we should be able to start seeing it again around July 4th. So that's super awesome news.
Yeah.
Facetiously, what was being mentioned in the comments was a dear friend of mine named Eric Gershman was going to Yale for an MFA and an MBA and had to do a show track, as you do when you're a theater kid. And his show track was to open. I don't even remember if it was a bipart. I'm pretty sure it was a bipart curtain or if it went up and down. But his one cue was to open this curtain somehow on this very belabored piece of college theater that happened once the curtain opened. And myself and another one of my dear friends, Bridget Cox, were giving Eric a hard time about what an impressive curtain cue it was for the rest of the day. And it's a gag that's continued for many years now. We like to joke that Eric is the youngest head rigger in the history of Yale School of Drama, which likely isn't true in any way, shape, or form. But
I love it. It kind of reminds me of being in high school band and having a triangle solo, a single ding. And one judge made a comment. Oh, beautiful, beautiful triangle hit. It was my only note in the whole song. Fantastic. Awesome. So can you tell us your life story, starting from the time that you were working at McDonald's and for a carpet cleaning company?
Sure. So that was high school. I worked at McDonald's at high school. I ran the drive-through, or I didn't run the drive-through. I worked in the drive-through on Saturdays, Sundays, for breakfast and lunch shift, which I'm pretty sure that's where my multitasking ability came from. That's a busy time to the drive-through. So I was doing that on the weekends, and then in the summers, I was working for a carpet cleaning company, doing carpet cleaning in the schools around the area, and Quinnipiac College is right near where I was living at the time. So we cleaned that place and businesses and all that kind of stuff. And all of that was going on while I was also working for a series of community but professional theater companies. So that was there was a lot of driving around, McDonald's and MCS, I think was the name of the carpet cleaning company. That was basically gas money to get to and from all these theatrical things myself and my group at the time was working on. Nice. And then so that was sorry. Just focusing on high school.
And that's it, guys. Then he was at TAIT.
And that's
Boom.
it.
No.
That's it. In high school, got in with the drama club and had turned to some of the seniors when I was a freshman and was like, what do you do if you want to do this like after high school or for a living? Like it never occurred to me that there was anywhere really to go with that. And they were like, oh, you can go to college for technical theater. And I said, you can go to college for technical theater? Where do you go to college for technical theater? At the time, NYU was a popular choice. Emerson was a popular choice. Carnegie, NCSA, those names tend to still be around today in that list of most popular ones. And Emerson, for whatever reason, was like the one I wanted to go to. I went and toured it. It's in Boston, Massachusetts, for anybody out there that doesn't know. So applied only to Emerson, early action, got in, which was awesome. Went to Emerson for 4 years and worked a lot professionally while at Emerson. Did every show I could for the school and did every show I could outside the school. And those of us that were there at that time all did that. We worked professionally for Opera Boston and the Majestic, which Emerson owns, was also a working touring opera house at the time, still is to my knowledge. But I don't know if the students are still as involved as they were at the time. But we worked professionally for those productions that came through. A number of us, myself included, also worked for Blue Man Boston while we were there. We were what were called subs for the show tracks for the technical side. Did that a lot, worked a lot in college. And then coming out of college, took the shotgun approach and applied for every job on Art Search, every job. And at the time, Emerson had a lot of alumni in Cirque. And myself and my friend Eric Gershman really, really wanted to work for Cirque and did what can best be described as begging those alumni to help us. And that was right when Cirque was opening their first show in Macau. And they couldn't get enough internal candidates to go. So Gersh and I were lucky enough to get those jobs with a little help from our friends. And we moved to Macau and did that show. That show would become known as Zaya, which was at the Venetian in Macau. Got that show up and running, was there for about 13 months, and then moved back home and got on some Cirque du Soleil big top tours. I was on Cusa for 2 years. I was on Ovo for about a year, and then I did Amaluna, where I was the head rigger of the creation and then the show as it started touring. And right as Amaluna was starting to leave Montreal, a bunch of those same friends that helped me get into Cirque in the first place were at TAIT and said, oh, you got to come down. They're looking for people that do performer flying. You should come check it out. I had no intention of leaving Cirque at the time. We were finally leaving Montreal, which meant we were not paying Montreal tax anymore. So we were all actually getting paid. And it was a great gig. We had the new show, which is the one Cirque theoretically cares about the most. So it was a good time. So we were in Toronto. I drove down to Pennsylvania and saw TAIT, and it was so clearly your opportunity to join a company on the upside of the bell curve. And just all these facilities that they hadn't moved into yet, and they just kept going and going. So I shortly after that put in my notice with Cirque and took a job at TAIT and been here ever since. It's been just over 8 years now.
8 years. And did you start out as a associate project manager, or we actually talked about you were like a systems integrator?
Yeah.
Weird title.
The titles have been interesting over the years. The original title was systems integrator, which is not an IT position. Fun fact. It was an acknowledgement on TAIT's part that they needed they needed a role to manage the group of people they were sending to site to deliver these shows. TAIT was just getting into automation. The shows were getting more and more complicated. And prior to that, when TAIT was mainly known for staging and stage machines that were simple and run locally, you would send the team that helped fabricate it to deliver it to the roadies or whomever the client was, teach them how it works, and then you'd leave. The shows were, and this will be a theme throughout this talk, I'm sure, the shows were becoming more and continue to become more and more complicated and interrelated. So now you were sending like a large team of different disciplines to go deliver a show and help create the show with the artistic team that was receiving it. And so systems integrator, the odd title aside, was an acknowledgement on TAIT's part that you needed a crew chief, basically. You needed someone representing TAIT that could help align all of these disparate needs. Mm-hmm. So it was originally called systems integrator. Shortly after that, it became called project crew chief, which was a way better title, way more descriptive title for what the role was.
Yeah, it sounds...
Yeah, go ahead.
It sounds like a title that could be easily understood by ATS systems, by applicant tracking systems. You know, I've definitely run my resume through them and they think I'm either a nurse or an IT person. And I'm like, that is absolutely not what I'm all about. This is, you know, so I like doing these live streams because, you know, we're kind of helping educate other HR recruiters, right? You'd be like, oh yeah, I was a flight director. Well, what does that mean? Were you were a stewardess? No. I was a flight director. I was involved in this, you know, and you can show them content like this.
All the more reason that people should, I hope more and more companies get away from the drop-down menu style of applying for jobs at their location, right? And similarly, I hope we all stop writing resumes that are just lists and kind of adopt more of that CV kind of format of like, this is the words, but then this is what that meant, and a little, you know, prose.
Yeah. And just as a side note, I totally encourage everybody to like put their shit out there, you know, put your projects out there on display on sites like LinkedIn. I know some people may think it's like a boring social media site, but there's influencers there too. It's actually kind of interesting. But, you know, when you've got people who just, have you ever done a search for stock images and you type like performer flying, like this background image is of aerialists and it was the best that I could get. You know, if you ever do a stock image search for what you do in entertainment, you're going to find some really funny, really non-relevant stuff. So we got to change that ourselves on social media. So sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, not at all. So then after Project Crew Chief, TAIT created a role called Tech Lead, which was kind of like supposed to be an internal project manager, which is redundant as a phrase. But that was somewhat short-lived, and that got absorbed into the project management department, and I became a project manager and eventually a senior project manager. The only real difference there is helping out to manage the people who manage projects in addition to managing projects. So, you know, approving vacations and timesheets and checking in with people and trying to keep the ship going in the direction we all believe at the moment it should be going.
Absolutely. And if I were a student watching this today, I would immediately pick up on some advice. Like right off the bat, I'm learning that you need to just start out doing any job that you can take and try to do the jobs that people don't want. Go to the places people don't want to go, because then that's where your opportunities are going to be. And that's how you move up in the world. I mean, you're the prime example of that. Nobody wanted to go to Macau. So
not enough people wanted to go to Macau.
Not enough. Yeah.
But yeah, no, that, and I tell that story all the time to college kids of, you know, if you, this analogy won't land for college kids, but it's a lot like when you try to book a date at a wedding facility for your wedding. You can have a facility you really want, or you can have a date you really want. You probably can't have both at the same time, or you're going to be waiting like 5 years, right?
Yeah.
So same thing, right? If you really, really, really want to work for a particular company, you probably need to be ready to go there for not necessarily the job you want, but to get in the door. And that's something I've done throughout my career. And similarly, especially in theater, we have an easy example of things that shouldn't be below anyone. Like you shouldn't think that you've graduated from doing the thing nobody quote unquote wants to do. And that's mopping the floor. Yeah. Mopping the floor is below no one.
Yeah.
Below, absolutely no one.
That's about having ownership of your facilities, ownership of your job, of your role, of the, of how you interact with people around you. There's a certain sense of pride in having a clean theater. There's a certain sense of pride in, having things that look nice and that people, want to visit. I mean, dumb analogy here, but have you ever been to a friend's house and their room is really dirty and messy and you're like, I don't really want to hang out here? Weird analogy, but you know what I mean. You're picking up what I'm putting down. Never,
Absolutely.
yeah. Ryan is going to be a live stream guest here. I've talked to him about it. He's got a lot of really good things to share regarding rigging. But yeah, absolutely, never be too good to do the job you did on the first day. Great advice right there. So let's take this back a little bit, and I would love to know because this is going to live on YouTube forever, and for people who aren't, I mean, we've got 90 people watching right now, and I'm sure a lot of you guys are, in the entertainment industry. A lot of you guys are probably riggers. A lot of you are probably, like examples of, you're probably like some of my idols are probably watching this. So I get a little nervous. But for the people who are going to be watching the replay and who may be thinking about entering entertainment, what is performer flying?
Sure. Well, I mean, to speak as broadly about it as humanly possible, performer flying is any time a performer leaves the ground, not of their own volition, not of their own intention, not of their own motivation. So that can be everything from the middle school production of The Wizard of Oz, where the Wicked Witch of the West or Glinda shows up and is on a very simple fly rig. And it can be as complicated as some of these VR interactive rigs that we're working on these days. Or, the go-to example, of course, is Pink with the twisty belt screaming around an arena or a stadium and everything in between. And then, of course, you have acrobatic rigging, which is related but different for a variety of reasons. But anytime you see a Cirque du Soleil as advanced as a Cirque du Soleil production, or as simple as even a home tissue rig for like an Air Yoga Lattes kind of class that you might see on Instagram, that all of the similar rules, the same train of thought and similar rules apply to that too.
So we touched on a couple of different roles. Like we talked about systems integrator, crew chief, project manager, flight director. Can you talk about what are some of the different roles involved in performer flying?
Sure. So I'm not going to remember all of them, but fortunately, we as an industry have taken the time to write this down. And if you really want to nerd out on the topic, you should Google ESTA performer flying E1.43-2016. That is the industry code of best practice, which has been adopted by ANSI, the American National Standards Institute. And that has an exhaustive list of all of the roles that need to exist on a performer flying production. The code also goes out of its way to indicate that each one of those roles does not need to be filled by an individual person. That one person can be wearing multiple hats, one person can be wearing all the hats, but writing all the roles down means that if you have read this document, you should not forget about the responsibilities of one of those roles. So there's that. Now, zooming out from there, there is a rigger. At its most basic level, we say there's a rigger and a trigger. So there's someone dealing with the shivs and the cables and terminating things and harnesses and the physical reality of the rig. And then there is someone sitting, in my case, at an automation desk, if we're talking about automated performer flying, and they are writing the cues into the software to precision control the machine so that they do the same thing over and over again. So that's a rigger and a trigger. Beyond that, you need an aerial choreographer. You need someone deciding what we're doing in the air. And then you need a performer. So that is the bare minimum to get it done. And then obviously there's a whole list of roles, as I said, in ESTA 1.43.
Nice. So what departments interact with each other the most?
Whew, man. So it's with a performer flying thing, pretty much everybody's involved. And again, I'm going to make examples that are kind of high-end examples, but you might not think the pyro department is particularly important to a performer fly rig, But if your performer fly rig is made out of materials that don't like extreme heat, like nylon harnesses or like the rope that we use sometimes, then interaction with the pyro department becomes literally life critical. So the point there is that there really isn't a department that isn't affected. Even the sound department, does the performer have in-ears? Do they have a microphone? How are we letting them carry all of those packs on themselves without the harness interacting with it? But all of that being said, the department that performer flying interacts with the most, besides the artistic team, is wardrobe. Wardrobe tends to be a whole thing because these harnesses are not necessarily very hideable by themselves. There's plenty of ways to pull it off, but that usually ends up being a major touch point throughout the process of creating one of these effects.
Yeah, that makes sense. I actually never would have considered the wardrobe department, but hey, there you go. What has there been a wardrobe, I guess like a costume in particular that's been difficult to fly in your time?
Oh, they're all difficult. Especially when people need to flip in their flying, because what you're going to end up doing is tuning the position of the harness and the position of the pick points to make them balanced. And that varies from person to person because some people are more legs or more torso, to say nothing of just different heights and different body weight distribution. So you're going to tune that in, and then someone's going to show up with if they're a mermaid and they have a fin, now you've changed their center of gravity, right? You may have changed a number of things about the rig. If they're an angel and they have to wear wings and the wings are catastrophically heavy, that's going to change a bunch of stuff. And if the wingspan is outside the frame and your two cables holding them up are right here and they need to flip through it, and we haven't talked about that or thought about that, that's going to affect a lot of stuff too. So there is no costume that is inherently not challenging. There are some that get there a lot faster.
It sounds like it's a lot of trial and error.
I mean, theater is. As I like to say, we are professional voiders of warranties. We, almost nothing is made for us explicitly as an industry. We tend to find things invented for some other purpose and go, oh, you know what I could do with this? And ultimately, that's the process of creating a show. In very few cases is a show really, really, really well mapped out before anyone gets in the room. Your theme park shows tend to be like that, but that's because there's a lot of IP approval associated with those. Everything else is like, yeah, we kind of think we know what we're doing. Let's all get in a room and let's figure it out. That's the rehearsal process. So it is always a very interactive solution. One thing I'm very proud of that we do at TAIT and that we really, frankly, beat into people that work with us is the goal, we're driving toward the same point on the horizon. The goal is for it to be perfect, but it doesn't have to be perfect today. What's the solution today that lets us keep going with rehearsal? What's the solution a week from now where we can have closer to the right thing? And then what's the final solution and on what timeline do we get there? We don't need to have the final solution first, as long as all solutions along the way are safe. Not suggesting we jeopardize safety, but maybe the thing could be really ugly today because it's just the 10 of us that are going to see it and we can work on making it pretty later. But in the meantime, we can keep rehearsing the thing.
That's a really fantastic thing to keep in mind, especially if you're a perfectionist. That's a really good mentality in order to challenge that perfectionism.
Yeah, we're going to get there. It's just not going to be right now. Right now, we're going to keep going. We're going to get to perfect as soon as we possibly can, but it's not right after this dinner break.
Yeah, and I've definitely been on shows where it's like, okay, we need a temporary solution for this. We need to get the show up and running, and then we're going to make our permanent fixes. So, oh yeah. Do you ever, whenever you like have talks like this, do you ever get flashbacks or like war stories that like flash before your eyes? It happens to me all the time. I'm sure it's happening to people in the audience. They're just like, yeah, I can remember a time when.
I imagine a decent number of the people in the audience can remember a time with me that we together went through that. But yeah, absolutely. It's always fun when you get a flashback from a memory you had really forgotten about it and or suppressed intentionally.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, it sounds like the heads of departments, costuming, or wardrobe, lighting, pyro, audio, rigging, automation, they all work with each other. How often are you guys working with the artistic team and directly with the performers?
Constantly. And that's really that's one of the things that delineates performer flying from a lot of other skills. Certainly the main thing that delineates it from other rigging. We like to act like performer flying, we could kill somebody, it has to be perfect. And all of that is true, but that's true for all rigging. You're hanging big, heavy stuff over people's heads, right? Yes, you have usually have more potential energy at your fingertips in performer flying than you might in static rigging. But if you do it wrong, the end result might be similar. So one of the biggest differences in performer flying is those soft skills, is those interpersonal skills and dealing with the performers in particular. Where someone is always dealing with the performer, at the very least to teach the performer how to put the harness on, if not being their person, their one-to-one, like, I am the person you are going to come talk to. It doesn't have to be me, but it should be someone, not some team, someone. That is the person that goes and checks with the performer after every flight. How did it feel? How did it go? What did you think? And just let them talk. If there's a note to be had, take the note every time. But just making sure you're maintaining this relationship, this open dialogue, that's of critical import. Now, when we're trying to get a show up and running, it's also talking to the artistic team. And that could be, depending on what kind of show we're talking about, that could be any number of people. That could be the pop star's manager. That could be the pop star themselves. That could be the person that's playing Peter Pan at the high school. How do we want this to look? Where are we going? And having those conversations and setting those expectations before you end up in the room with everybody and with the hopefully finished machines. So that everyone knows what we're going to be able to do before we get there. So there aren't any surprises. If you're going to have a difficult conversation about what a rig can do, it is infinitely better to have it before you're all there staring at it and it can't do the thing everybody wanted it to do. Neither is a comfortable conversation, but the one talking about it in the future tense is always better than the one talking about it in the present tense. Always.
Having difficult conversations is better as soon as an issue arises, and having solutions to those issues is also better than just, throwing negativity out there. And it also sounds like there's an element of making the performer feel safe.
100%. 100%. I like to intentionally misquote a war on drugs phrase, which is perception is 9/10 of the law. And I really go into this in the book, but everything must factually be safe. But if everything is factually safe and the performer doesn't feel safe, it ultimately doesn't matter that it is safe, because the performer's perception of what's going on is what's going to determine the day, how the day is going to go. So now that is not to suggest that we should take an unsafe rig and convince a performer that it is safe. That is not what we're talking about. But the performer needs to have confidence in us as the team that is going to keep him or her safe, that we have done all of that. So again, that's about keeping that dialogue open and wanting to hear everything they have to say and being ready with an answer when they have questions, but also not making up answers, right?
Absolutely.
I don't know, comma, I'll get back to you is a perfectly acceptable phrase to use at any point in life for any reason. So let's not abandon that while we're having a conversation with a performer. If they want to know what happened, if something went slightly awry or not as we intended to, but everybody's safe, and they want to know what happened, if you don't know in the moment, don't make something up. I don't know. I'll get back to you. And then make sure you get back to them in some sort of timely fashion. But not lying in that instance and not being afraid to say, I don't know. Like that is some crucial soft skill stuff.
Yeah, communication is absolutely key. How do you keep calm when you're frustrated, and how do you not let your frustrations affect the way that you address your team or affect the way that you address a performer or artistic director?
Well, I think a lot of people watching that know me are laughing right now and excited to hear my answer about this. No, I mean, I think it's important to separate in your mind whether you're mad at a person or you're mad at the circumstances that you're in right now, and taking emotion out on a person, especially in a high stress moment, is not a productive thing to do. Even if you're mad at what's going on, yelling about it probably isn't going to get anything productive done in the short term. What's better is to, pack that down. Let's focus on the task at hand. Let's get through this speed bump that's right in front of us. And then let's let everybody calm down and let's have a controlled adult conversation about whatever the matter might have been after the fact, because people are more apt to take a note when they're not jacked up on adrenaline.
Absolutely. Are you a meditator by chance?
I am not. It has been on I have a weekly planner that has like yearly goals in it. And I think for 3 years now, a yearly goal has been learn to meditate. And I have failed 3 years running, and we're 2 months into the 4th year of me failing at that. But no, I'm not.
Yeah, you just got to do it. I recently started doing it just this past week, and it's honestly been very, very life-changing. It really gets me in the right mindset. So awesome.
The joke I like to tell, which is a truth fact, is every time you go to a doctor now for any reason, you get the blood pressure cuff, right? And they do the blood pressure thing, and then they say, whatever the numbers are, I'm barely listening, and then ask the question we all do, which is that good? And I almost always from the nurse will get, oh, that's like perfect. And then the next words out of my mouth are, no one believes me when I tell this story.
I am a little skeptical of it too. I feel like you need to record it and post it so that we all know for sure. Let's move on to education. So let's say a high school student really wants hands-on training for performer flying, but their high school theater program doesn't do any rigging beyond attaching scenery to a batten. What do you recommend for that student?
I mean, even being at a high school program that attaches scenery to a batten is somewhat atypical. That would be great. This advice is very geographic, for which I apologize. But as I said in my story, in high school, I worked semi-professionally at a couple of theater companies around town, and in college I did the same thing. So at whatever level of school you're in, don't only take advantage of the opportunities that the school presents you. If this is something you really want to do, you need to be looking outside of that as the only source of those opportunities. So obviously, if you live in New York City or New Haven, Connecticut, or major cities around the world, I'm not saying New Haven's a major city before everybody freaks out, but New Haven has a proud theater tradition. If you're in a major city, you probably have access to more opportunities than if you're in a small town in the middle of a state somewhere. But find those opportunities, just get more reps in. And I would encourage you to reach out to the local IATSE chapter, which is the Stagehands Union, or the local, whatever the local workforce company is that provides labor for those things. It varies from state to state and location to location. Reach out to them and try to get on their overhire list. That doesn't guarantee you opportunities at performer flying, but if you're a high school student, it's going to weigh up the opportunities. And then, when you're there and they're assigning people to different crews, try to get in with those people. The people on tour dragging these things around, once they get over the hump of the day of getting it set up in the first place, are usually love to talk about this stuff. Would love, if you're there, you found your way in there somehow and like, hey, can I just ask you a couple questions? They will more than likely be thrilled to do so, as long as everything's working and load in is over the hump of the day. So
here's a shameless plug here. Tyler DeLong says students should check out www.delongriggingsolutions.com/one-shot training. I can't wait to check out this resource after this live stream, but I love resources, and I really appreciate that you have a book, Jim. Like, this is an amazing book. I think it took me a week to get through all of it, and it's full of really great stuff. But, the more resources we have out there, the more accessible it is for people to learn about the different concepts and to learn about these different skills. And I think that even if you have to start with a book or you have to start with online training, I know Delbert Hall has online training. Oh gosh, now I feel like I have to list as many as possible. I know Chicago Fly House does online webinars, EPS does online stuff, Bill Sapsis has online training. Anywhere that you can find online training or any book that you can get your hands on, if that's how you have to start because you don't have the opportunity to get hands-on training, that's a fantastic place to start. Because Jim, if a student walked up to you and said, hey, I read your book and I read this book, and I've been practicing Vectorworks or whatever, you're probably going to want to take that person under your wing more than someone who's like, hey, I don't know, I think I might want to check this out, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're living in a time where in our pockets, we have more computing power than the Apollo 11 capsule that landed on the moon. and we have access to the entire world's cumulative knowledge throughout human history in our pockets at all time. And, that mercifully is trickling down to technical theater too. So there's never been a better time to want to learn about anything you don't know about, right? Between YouTube and there's a number of Facebook groups like Safety and Aerial Arts and the ETCP groups, the study group for the ETCP test and the ETCP group in general. Like these are huge resources where people post about classes, webinars they're teaching, classes they teach in 3D, God willing, when that becomes a thing again in the near future. So there's never been a better time to have access to the fundamentals of this information, which is really what I tried to do in my book. I wanted to present the fundamentals and, really, really went out of the way in the book to not have it be a this is how you do it. And I think I lay that out in the introduction.
Totally. Yeah.
The goal here is just to present you with the variables you should be thinking about, because there is no one way to do a performer flying rig. It's about the right tool for the right job. So you need to understand these concerns and balance them as they need to be balanced for what you are trying to do in this instance, and recognize that however you solve the problem on this show is not going to be the same formula on the next show. So that's really what we tried to do with the book, and have it be more conversational than like, high school history textbook, just bashing you with information.
Absolutely. And if anybody has taken you under their wing and they're telling you that their way is the only way to do something, you should get a couple other opinions, because there's more than one way to do anything. There's more than one solution for any issue. So yeah, definitely get other people's opinions, and people are wildly accessible on LinkedIn and on Facebook. So, give it a shot.
Yeah. And one small caveat to that as well is that, 101 classes, basic classes in anything tend to be thou shalt not, because if you thou shalt not a bunch of stuff, you can probably be safe 95% of the time, recognizing 70% of all statistics are made up on the spot. So the 101 classes are usually thou shalt not, and that's where you're going to start, because there's a lot of simple things, low hanging fruit you can not do to keep yourself safe almost all the time. As you advance through those, your 201s, your 301s, your 401s, and so on, in any topic, and certainly in performer flying, the answer, the more advanced you get, tends to be, but depends, right? There is no, this is how you have to do it. The answer is going to be, well, what's the humidity? What's the sunlight like? What's the wildlife like? What's the performer doing? There's all of these other considerations to answer really advanced topics. And so just keep that in mind too when you're starting.
I love that. What is the wildlife like? Yeah. Yeah. Flashbacks happening for me right now.
That goes with that one, actually.
All right. Tell it.
A group of TAIT employees was working on a pink style rig for another performer, but same effect, 4 winches, twisty belt, fly around a stadium. And one of the things we do every day is inspect the full length of these ropes. And these are fabric ropes. In this case, it was probably Technora or Technora adjacent, one of the similar families of 12-strand ropes. And this one section of the rope that wasn't passing through any shivs anywhere in the system was getting worn more and more every day. And the team didn't know why. And then eventually, at one time, they looked up at the right time, and there was a bird. I think it was a seagull, but it doesn't really matter. There was a bird sitting on the rope right in that spot and pecking at the rope to pick it apart to presumably take parts of it back to its nest. So that rope was replaced, and a security guard or two was dispatched to that area and told that their only job for the rest of the time that show was in that stadium was to make sure that no birds started to eat the rope.
That's fantastic.
Like, we don't have enough problems. We got to deal with the birds too.
What? Bird watcher, bird catcher, or glorified babysitter? What job title would that be at that point?
I don't know. I mean, we could make it really esoteric and have it be like, rope quality manager.
Wildlife manager.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So that honestly really cracks me up. Okay. So if a student decided to go to college, would you recommend they pursue a theater degree or an engineering degree? This is a question for 18-year-old Siobhan. So
sure.
Because 18 didn't know if she wanted to do engineering or theater, but she ended up in theater. So
I mean, almost anything is more valuable than a theater degree based on the numbers. based on the numbers, right? Every year, USA Today or whoever releases their list of the 10 most worthless college degrees.
It's always theater.
And theater's not always number one. And in fact, it's fallen off lately, but it's always up there. It's always up there. And you know, there's some truth to that, right?
You don't have to have a degree to get into entertainment. You really don't.
No, you sure don't.
You don't even have to graduate high school, but don't quote me on that. Graduate high school.
Graduate high school, absolutely. So, you know, that comes down to almost every liberal arts school has a theater program, but not all theater programs are created equal, right? There are those that consistently, especially on the technical side, those that consistently produce the professionals of tomorrow, and those that are really just high school theater, you know, cranked up a little bit. And you're not necessarily getting any real professional training to go enter the workforce as a part of it. So keep that in mind when you're picking the program that you're going to go devote enough money to buy a house with to that program over the next 4 years of your life. So between theater and engineering, almost certainly the answer is engineering. And then the challenge might become finding a school where you can do both. Can you major in some form of engineering and minor in theater, which we have some employees at TAIT that are recently out of Carnegie Mellon, for example, that did exactly that. And boy, howdy, are they valuable.
I had to throw in Emerson College is where Jim graduated from. He's also a guest speaker at Yale University School of Drama. I graduated from Cal State Fullerton, so I had to shamelessly put that one in there. But as you also mentioned, Carnegie Mellon, I personally looked into UNLV, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, because they also had a hybrid program.
And Cirque du Soleil, pre-COVID, was very involved in writing their curriculum and doing a lot of like, I don't want to belittle it by calling it like a career day thing, but some sort of thing like that, where if you went to UNLV and you were in that program, you had like an into the Cirque hiring thing. I don't really fully know the details, but that existed and hopefully will continue to in the future, but I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Stephanie says, my guidance counselor wanted me to go into engineering. I had no idea what that even meant at the time. Well, that's because you didn't have industry explorers back then. No, I'm kidding. Kidding.
Engineering is one of those things that they recommend to anybody who maybe has taken a math class once. Because engineering, like going to school to be a lawyer, is perceived as a thing that will guarantee you income. Nothing guarantees you income. You also have to be like serviceable at whatever the profession you're going into is. So engineering gets recommended a lot to kids that don't necessarily have a fixed idea, but are probably good in math. And, that's not a terrible suggestion, but, do your research. If it's not your thing, don't sign up to go to a school for 4 years that's catastrophically expensive for a thing you're not going to go do for the rest of your life.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at some of the comments that are flying in right now, and I want to revisit the bird wrangler position. So we had a couple of suggestions. Bird wrangler being one of them. Yes.
Yeah, good one, Vito.
Aviation security.
Avian security. That's good.
I like this one.
Who doesn't like a good pun?
Bird bouncer.
Bird bouncer. Good one, Howie.
You got your ID? No, you cannot peck at this rope. Get out of here. Anyway, Dawn was on a tour with border collies. That sounds like heaven. It sounds like heaven. I want to be on a tour with just dogs.
It depends, man. There's an old adage, and it's for performers, but it's never go on camera with children or animals, because you will invariably get upstaged.
Yeah.
Being on tour with animals is probably great, but somebody's job has to be to take care of the animal too, right? So that's it depends. I've seen security dogs because that's a thing on some of the larger tours these days. When we were rehearsing a show in Arizona, the blacktop was too hot for them to walk up the blacktop to get to the grass, so the dogs got driven around in a golf cart. And I, having at that point not slept for a couple of days, turned around and was just like, what are we doing wrong? We could have been the guys that drive the dogs around in a golf cart, and instead we're us. This is horrible.
Oh, but dogs. Anyway, but doggies. So, all right, let's say some kid is watching this and is being pushed to pursue engineering, and maybe they actually really want to pursue engineering, but they somehow want to be involved in entertainment. Do you have a concentration that would maybe more beneficial than the other? So, for example, should someone pursue structural, mechanical, electrical, civil engineering? Does it matter?
I mean, I don't think it does. We use all of those, and it then depends where you end up. So there are engineering firms that really specialize in entertainment. The ones that jump to mind are Clark Reeder and McLaren and Theta, and there's others. So if you just go get a very button up and tie kind of engineering degree and you go work for one of those firms, you very well might end up engineering a roller coaster for a theme park, or a performer flying winch for TAIT, or and anything in between. So structural, mechanical, electrical, all of those. Civil, I've no example of this currently, but sustainability is becoming more and more of a conversation in our industry. We are inarguably a very wasteful industry. We're a very small industry, so we don't have a huge footprint with our wastefulness, but we are very wasteful. So sustainability is really starting to become more of a conversation, and the environmental impact. So I am certain, first of all, that massive theme park companies that owned lots of land probably have civil engineers on their payroll, and hire civil engineers to think about the environmental impact of when they go build a new parking lot, for example, which is probably like the most environmental impact thing we could think of, really, when you think about it, because a theme park at least still has foliage through it,
right? Not
so much a parking lot. And certainly, even on the touring side, sustainability is becoming a real conversation, which is an exciting new challenge. And I'm really looking forward to the next wave of brilliant ideas around that come out of this industry when the world turns back on here soon.
Absolutely. It's going to be really interesting to see how technology progresses. So moving on from education and moving on from potential college degrees, let's talk about the School of Hard Knocks, which is where a lot of people in entertainment get their degrees, right? The School of Hard Knocks. Are there any certifications you recommend current professionals earn?
I mean, absolutely. So, I mean, first of all, it's the Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing. Like, just go get reps. And that's, again, I'm just going to keep hammering on it. That's a thing I did in high school. That's a thing we all did in college, with that group that I was at Emerson with. Just get more reps, and get to that 10,000 hours, and again, it's not like, oh, I'm only at 9,500 hours. It's a colloquial 10,000 hours. Go get the reps. So that's number one. If we're talking about specific certifications and specific to performer flying, the ETCP rigging accreditations are both definitely worth your time. One's for theater, one's for arena. I recommend getting them both, regardless of if you do currently or whether or not you intend to work in both. They do cover really different subject matters. And learning, training yourself to be able to pass both tests will benefit you in either, whether or not you work in both. So I would strongly recommend that. There's also electrician versions of the ETCP one. I can't remember their title. And Bill, if you're watching, I apologize. But the way I think about it is they have one for little power and one for big power. And if you're into electricity, both of those are probably worth your time. Other than that, there are things you can do that would show on a resume that you're really interested in rigging. Rope access is one of them. Having either a SPRAT or an errata level 1 rope access certification would really show that, like, if I saw that on a resume from someone coming out of college, I would be like, oh, okay, this person's like comfortable on ropes. That's cool. That's good to know. And they certainly didn't have an employer pay for this, which means they invested in themselves. That's interesting. They spent their free time doing this. So that's good to know. So yeah, I think those are the ones that really spring to mind. If you're interested in getting into project management, I would also, of course, recommend the PMP certification, which I do not even have yet. I intend to get on that in the years coming, hopefully this year. I don't know. But PMP would strong recommend. And then it's always good to have an active first aid, CPR. That's if you're going to be doing performer flying, that's a good thing to have. Not that accidents are prevalent, but if accidents happen, you're probably going to be the first person on the scene, and being comfortable with the vocabulary around first respondering, if that's a word, is always a helpful thing.
So here's a nice comment that came in. Entertainment electrician and portable power distribution are the two ETCP electrician type certifications you can earn. And PMP, what does that stand for? It's like project
Manager
management
professional.
There you go. Here, Tansy's got it. Project management professional. Thank you so much. Great comments. Sprat for USA, IRATA for the rest of the world. Yeah, pretty good. They do. I'm pretty sure there are Sprat technicians in other countries, but it is very, very. That's mostly used in the United States for sure. Yeah, CPR is good to have no matter where you're at. Absolutely. Sure. We had a question come in, and I know I said I wouldn't open up audience Q&A just yet. But here, this is a good one since we're on this topic. What are your opinions on taking both ETCP tests at the same time?
Oh, interesting. They didn't. Okay, this is me being an old person. They didn't both exist at the same time when I took them. So I didn't have an opportunity to do that. So I guess you can take them like back to back is the question, Tyler. And if you feel comfortable doing them back to back, go nuts. You usually take these things at an H&R block. H&R blocks usually smell pretty funny. So like, I don't know if you want to take 2 multiple hour tests back to back in an H&R block. That's up to you. If you're really comfortable with both subject matters, go for it. Knock them out in a day. Otherwise, like I said, they really do cover that. There's not a lot of overlap in the Venn diagram of the theater one and the arena one. So it might be worth like focusing on one, passing that test, scheduling the next one, getting yourself D'd up for it, and then going and hitting the second one. But it's a matter of personal preference, really.
So I'm going to go ahead and ask one last question, and then we'll open it up to an audience Q&A. What advice do you have for professionals in the entertainment industry who want to get into performer flying?
Oh man. Show an interest, be verbal about your interest. Even at TAIT, there are people that are not riggers that want to be riggers. Maybe they're in design, maybe they're in controls integration, maybe they're in fabrication. But by saying like, oh, those are the people that are doing it, I have access to those people. Being shy about your desire to get into something new, especially at a place you already work, isn't going to get the job done, right? Especially in entertainment. There's a lot of loudmouth type A's in the industry. And, but that also means that such requests are usually received very positively. If someone comes up to me at TAIT and goes, hey, I really want to get into this, the next words out of my mouth are, awesome. When can we find a time? Like, let me think, what's the next project? How can we get you on it? Right. So being verbal about your desire, and even if you're on the overhire call sheet for a Rhino or an IATSE, being verbal about that with crew chiefs about, hey, I really kind of want to get into this. Like, can I be the 10th person on the team of 10? Like, I'm not suggesting I'm your number 1 draft pick, but like, can I be number 10? Can I be the last picked for dodgeball, but at least I got picked? And just, again, get those reps, get familiar with things, read a book. I might suggest this one. And get so much of what we do, so much of any profession, but so much of entertainment is the vocabulary, is the nouns and the verbs, right? And, just try to absorb it, try to get into it, understand how we think through a performer flying challenge, because it's not necessarily the same as how we think through not all this stuff fits in this truck kind of challenge.
I hate that challenge, by the way. As a perfectionist, as a recovering perfectionist, I could not be a truck loader. That is not for me. Like, I'm really terrible when it comes to packing laundry for a trip. My partner can't stand me when it comes time to doing that. So, all right, audience Q&A. Go ahead and leave your questions in the comments, and we'll have Jim answer them. I know we had one earlier. Let me just find it real quick. And by real quick, I mean awkwardly slow. Here's a good one. Joel asks, do you recommend keeping Sprat certification active, or is it good enough to go through it the one time?
Frankly, this is going to sound ridiculous, but it's true. It depends if you're actually going to use it. So I like to insist that riggers at TAIT get sent to a rope access class, because when I first took a rope access class, it was like eye-opening of like this whole different toolbox with which to solve problems. So if that is all you're going to use it for, go once. You can always say you had it and it expired, and that's fine. If you're going to use it, if you are working at a place where rope rescue in particular, so this would be like a high-end performer flying effect, either a rock and roll tour or at a theme park or a Cirque du Soleil show, keeping that active might be worth it. If you're working for one of those companies, they will, of course, finance you keeping it active and give you the time to do so. But if it's something you're chasing, keeping it active would probably be a good thing to do. And to dial in on a comment from earlier, errata is good everywhere in the world, including in North America. Sprat is the North American equivalent of errata, so it's only recognized in North America. So if you had to pick between one or the other, errata is going to get you by in more places than Sprat. But taking either is better than taking neither.
I love that. Taking either is better than taking neither. Great advice. I'm going to go back to a couple other comments that we received earlier today while we're receiving more questions. 100% would drive the doggy golf cart. Me too. Here's a good one. Coursera. Yes, Coursera has structural and civil engineering certifications through different colleges. Absolutely. What else? Here's the website for getting your ETCP certification.
Thanks, Barb.
OSHA 10 or OSHA 30 are also good certifications to have.
Scott,
if you're
excellent answer, Scott. Yeah, OSHA 10, OSHA 30. If you can survive the 10 or the 30 hours of going through that, it's definitely a certification worth having.
I get to do an OSHA 48 now.
Oh,
that's what I get to do this week. So fun.
Thing I discovered in my professional career, taking OSHA 10 3 times does not count as OSHA 30, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's a good thing to point out for sure. Gosh, here's a really good comment. The IATSE Training Trust Fund will reimburse workers under IA contracts for ETCP and SPRAT certifications. Excellent. Really good to know. Thank you guys for leaving your comments and adding to this awesome live stream. It's going to live on YouTube forever. So anybody who wants to know about how to get started in entertainment and in performer flying, they're going to see this. And, it's all really good advice. I'm so happy you guys tuned in with us. Yeah, absolutely. Jonathan, get on the call list for your local IATSE union.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, here's some questions. We got some more questions that came in. So Josh Russell asks, does TAIT offer beginner navigator classes, and what experience would you need to start?
First of all, hi, Josh. It's been too long. TAIT does offer beginner navigator classes. And for those of you that don't know what Navigator is TAIT's proprietary automation control platform, which is extremely powerful. And I often equate it to AutoCAD because if you buy a license of AutoCAD, first of all, it's very expensive. And then when you open it, you get a toolbar up here that has like 5 icons on it, and that's it. And it doesn't tell you how to do anything. And the brilliance of AutoCAD, the difficulty people have with getting into AutoCAD is also the brilliance of it, which is there is no one way to draw the thing you're trying to draw. There's different tool sets depending on what that point on the horizon is you're driving towards. Navigator, very similar story. You buy a license of Navigator and you open it and you get a toolbar up here with 5 icons on it, and it doesn't tell you how to do anything. There's a help menu, hit F1, the whole manual is there. But it's a very pliable machine. It's intended to be able to be utilized in different ways for different challenges. So that makes getting into it somewhat difficult, but it makes it a wildly powerful tool once you understand it. So that's what Navigator is. TAIT does have beginner Navigator classes. Obviously, before COVID, we would do them in person at our training facility in Lidditz. And now, which is now also repurposed as a TV studio because we do things like this in the COVID era. So we would do those in person, either in Lidditz, or we would go to clients who want to pay for them. And I do not believe that we currently have a digital only version, but that is something we've been working on throughout this slowdown period. So hopefully that exists soon. And it's, I believe the intent is for it to come with an interactive portion as well. So it's not just you watching a YouTube video. For example, it would also be a login to a portal where you could be interacting with Navigator and be learning as you go. What experience do you need to start learning Navigator? None. I learned it. That's proof anybody can do it. Literally no experience whatsoever. The basic Navigator class, I believe we even have a class before that, which is just Intro to Automation Fundamentals. And again, that's just about nouns, right? Like, what's an encoder? If you don't know that, it's not to suggest you can't use Navigator, but you might get a little lost in some of the crosstalk along the way. Yes, that book definitely will help with the nouns as well. So there are no there are no hard prerequisites to taking the first navigator class, but at least being conversant in the nouns around automation would probably be helpful. But you certainly don't need a degree in computer science, for example, to get behind Navigator. I got behind it. I've programmed some shows. Anybody can do it.
I mean, that would be really fun for a computer science major to know, is that they can be the one to build the machines.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
These entertainment things, let me be as vague as I possibly can. These entertainment things are only getting bigger, faster, and more interdisciplinary.
And hopefully more sustainable,
lighter, or more siloed. So yeah, computer science is a real thing. You know, getting all of this tech in the room is only half the battle. Then it all has to talk to each other and run flawlessly every single time. And, you know, you get into deep conversations that I'm not even going to pretend to understand about network traffic and reset loops and all manner of, oh, well, the projector resets on this frequency and this other thing does it slightly differently. And as you can see, I'm not very conversant in it. But it is a whole thing to be managed as well.
Yeah, and let's not forget that game engines are being used more and more in entertainment, from
100%.
The Mandalorian to, you know, attractions at theme parks. A couple good comments that came in earlier. I believe CM Rock Lidditz gives Sprat and Irata concurrently. They
Truth.
Definitely, yeah, they definitely do.
And most places do. That really comes down to who their certifier is that comes and gives you the test at the end of the week, whether they have both of their certifications. But Rock Lidditz sure does.
Yep. And OSHA 10 and 30 classes are relevant to our industry and offered by both IATSE and the Event Safety Alliance. So yeah, absolutely. If you've got the time to kill, definitely just go get that certification. Here's a question. How valuable do you find touring experience versus just being a local?
You know, it becomes about the reps. The locals, as they are typically referred to as, have just as much experience loading equipment in and out of a building as the touring crew. The touring crew has really intimate knowledge of their show, but the locals loaded your show in and out today. Tomorrow, Bruno Mars is coming, and the day after that, Lady Gaga is coming. So they see all of the equipment. So the locals really have some great opinions, some very nuanced opinions of the different companies' gear and the different shows, because they see all of them, right? As opposed to like your team touring with Pink knows everything about that show, but they don't necessarily know any of the details, nor do they have time to care about the Lady Gaga show, for example. It's just different. If we're talking about at TAIT, if we were hiring someone, we've hired people that are touring, and we've hired people that are locals, and we've hired people that have just lived at one permanent installed facility, be it a performing arts center or a theme park or anything else. So there is no shibboleth there. There is no one is the way to go versus the other. I think it's about maximizing your opportunities wherever you are.
Yeah, and as an individual, it's all about applying yourself. It's all about being a sponge and then reapplying that knowledge in other situations. I was
now, that
a
being
local
said,
for
Vito and I were on tour together for a number of years, so there's that.
Yeah. Well, I was mostly a local because I was going to college at the same time that I was rigging. So, but I learned a lot.
Being
I
local,
think
you get a lot of reps.
Yeah. And it's not just about the reps. It's also about, how many different situations can you apply yourself in? How many different challenges can you expose yourself to? Because there may be challenges on a permanent install. There may be challenges on a touring show, on tour, or as a local. And it's just all about recognizing that and being able to learn from every single experience that you have. What inspired you to write a book?
Oh, man. Well, I just wasn't busy enough at the time. That's not true. Also, I had too much self-esteem. And I heard that writing a book would take me down a couple pegs, which that's true. What inspired me to write a book, really? I just wanted to write a book about the fundamentals. You try to find a book about the fundamentals of performer flying at all, and especially automated performer flying, and you really can't. It didn't exist. And that seemed silly to me. in this world we currently live in, where, the joke I always make is that you can't open a used car dealership anymore without an acrobat on a tissue doing a routine. And with that prevalence of this in the world, it just seems like the fundamentals should be readily available, and they weren't. There's some books out there. Bill Sapsis put together a book called Entertainment Rigging in the 21st Century that had a chapter on it. But there was nothing that really laid it all out. And so I wanted to write it, and got down to the business of writing a book, which is arduous. Writing the book is only half the battle. Then there is turning it into a book, which is a whole nother full-time job after you actually write the thing. Bill Sapsis and I'm blanking on the other gentleman's name, but I went to them they both had published books and said, I'm thinking about writing a book. And both of them said, oh my God, that's awesome. Great. But just so you know, writing a book is horrible. And I thought to myself, oh, it's so jaded. No, like this is for the people, like this is for the industry. We have to do this. And now, having finished, I'm here to tell you, writing a book is horrible, is a horrible experience. But I'm glad to say that I did it. I'm glad to be able to refer to it in the past tense. And I'm glad the people that have read it seem to have enjoyed it.
I certainly did. Reveal. I was not a theater major. How could you tell? Sorry, awkward pause here. Interesting to see how many tours set up their rigging gear in the same manner. It makes it easy for local crews to get it up fast. Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great takeaway when you see something being done the same way over and over and over again. It may be the most efficient way. If you're in a ballroom and like there's a certain way that truss is wrapped in order to get the because you have very little headroom, those are really good takeaways. I would say the thing that most prepared me for my ETCP test was doing a permanent install in Vegas, because when it comes to a permanent install, there's just different solutions. Different solutions are necessary, right? But again, this just goes back to like learning something new from every experience you have. Here is a question. How can the industry ensure it strikes a balance between the high demand for performer flying with the number of competent and experienced practitioners? Is there anywhere the industry can improve?
Oh, there's everywhere the industry can improve in this regard, right? There is no certification that exists that says I know how to do performer flying. And part of that is because it's very expensive to set up such things, and there's not a big enough population to fund the effort to set it up and then to manage it, as ETCP does with the other certifications they have. So, I mean, if forgetting about capitalism and how the world works, like that seems like a good place to start. But that being said, I think it's about riggers in general, and I'm speaking being one. We tend to be very type A and very, I could do that. I got it. And, making sure we're all working to hammer that attitude out of people that are up and coming. The best way to not hurt anybody is to not put yourself in a position where you're overreaching. Again, I don't know. I'll get back to you. Totally acceptable thing to say, right? So part of it is on us to not take jobs that we don't feel comfortable delivering on. Other than that, I argue in the foreword of my book that we should have a certification for automated performer flying, or at least automated rigging, and expand that a little bit, because it involves a lot of different, just facility impact forces for starters, and it's a different thought process from static rigging and even theater or arena rigging. Again, it's the same argument of, are there enough people to support such a thing? And then the biggest companies in our industry that need to have a rigid HR structure. So I'm not faulting them for this, but there is a rigging department and there is an automation department, and they are separate, and their line of responsibility is very well delineated. And it tends to be the rigging department is responsible for the cable or the rope and out through the physical reality of the rig. And once that cable touches the winch drum and is terminated to the winch drum, the automation department is in charge of everything from there back to the computer. Again, I fully respect why we need to have such a clear delineation, but as my previous thing about having an automated rigging certification would imply, I think that we need to merge those two departments together to, instead of having a rigging and an automation department, having an automated rigging department We need those Venn diagrams to overlap a lot more so that people understand. Understanding the what is one thing, but understanding the why is often more important. And we need more of an overlap. There'll always be a waxing crescent on one side of people that only stare into a computer, and a waning crescent on the other side of people that only really nerd out about splicing ropes. But we need those to be very thin slivers of moon shape, and we need a big pool of people in the middle that understand a lot of both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had Jim on my Industry Explorers podcast, which I now have a podcast manager. So those recordings are going to be edited and published pretty soon. So watch out for Jim's episode. And we actually take a deep dive into what it would take to make an automated rigging ETCP certification, which was a really fun exercise, I might say. I really enjoyed it. Here's another question. In regards to TAIT, how do you see the differences between IQ and Navigator being used, especially for people starting their career?
Great question. So this is a little bit of inside baseball, but IQ is the next phase of Navigator. If you've seen a Navigator screen before, it looks very like Windows 3.2 or Windows 95 is probably the most fair thing. And there's a lot of information, and that is really important for people that are running the most complicated things in the world, your O theaters, for example. You need all that data coming at you, and you as the operator need to train yourself to be able to absorb all that data. But that's O is the outlier. Shows that big are not the majority of shows, right? If you're just running a line set up and down at a performing arts center, it doesn't need to look that complicated. So IQ is the next step forward, which is a different GUI, a different graphical user interface that looks, frankly, to be flippant about it, looks more like an iPad app. It's very touch sensitive, and you can drag things around, and that's how that looks. The goal is to have IQ run everything, including all the complicated stuff. I would love to tell you what the roadmap is in linear time for that. I can't remember, but it is years plural, and it might be like a double-digit number, if I'm being honest. But I don't know on that one. Right now, you're in one of those moments where the industry uses both, and it couldn't hurt to learn both. And to Josh Russell's question earlier, our basic Navigator class is now, I think, about 50-50 IQ and Nav, which kind of expresses exactly that change that we're trying to integrate into the industry.
How do you feel about TAIT being a powerhouse in the field of performer flying and acquiring and merging with competing companies versus having more competition and companies in the industry?
Man, that's great. First of all, very flattered to have TAIT be referred to as a powerhouse in the field of performer flying. Thank you. We work hard. We like the gigs we do, but it's nice. It's nice to know that perception maybe exists. I'm for more competition. I don't think we have a monopoly on the best ideas. I love everybody we work with here at TAIT, and I think we've got a lot of brilliant people, but competition is good. Competition is the point of capitalism. So I'm thrilled that there's more competition out there. It keeps us honest. It keeps us from getting lazy. I love seeing what the other companies do and seeing how they're tweaking and improving things. And I assume that they like seeing the same from us. So I like being kept honest and kept on my toes in that regard.
Great answer. And here's another wonderful comment from Stephanie. Mechanical design for the stage by Alan Hendrickson goes over the math of building winches. Yes, that is another really great resources. Any resources that we go over today will be in the links in the description below when you go revisit our YouTube channel. And yeah, anything that we mention, if you want to find out how to buy Jim's book, that'll be like the first link listed in the description. So by Monday, you'll be able to see all this really, really great stuff. Here's another question. Amazing question, by the way, guys. I'm really flattered that I have a lot of industry professionals watching and tuning in today. It really means a lot to me. So thank you so much. And thank you for the questions. What are your thoughts on stage managers calling performer flying cues versus direct rigger and artist communication?
Remember the thing about the 201, 301, 401? Well, it depends. And that's the answer here. It really depends. Even at Cirque, it's 50-50. I think it's valuable in the most complicated shows. I think it's valuable for the stage manager to give a GO for when the cue should happen, and that everyone's on the same page, that either if it's a rigger with a joystick, although we've really moved away from that as an industry, or the automation person, whoever's hitting the button, that is actually going to move the performer into the air, it is understood that that person has instant and constant veto power to not hit the button right when the stage manager says to. I think that keeps everybody as safe as possible. So the stage manager is kind of looking everywhere and ensuring that any other dependencies have cleared. And the stage manager is saying the cue now could go. And then the operator is who is laser focused on the performer, or performers, plural, as the case may be, laser focused on them, can go, okay, and they have successfully grabbed the straps correctly, and I'll hit the button now. So I think that's the answer. On some of the smaller things, especially manually operated fly systems, if we're talking like a high school production in Peter Pan, the stage manager calling it is probably fine, but the person that actually puts the other person in the air can't just be going because someone said to. Like, there needs to be a very constant connection between the person operating and the person flying, because it's a dance. Even when it's automation, it's a dance, and you both need to be there. And when you're just like with dance, when both partners are on the same page, it really is something special to see.
Great question, Ginger. We have a couple more questions that came in. I'm going to try to ask that we, not ask any more questions. You guys are clearly not tired of hearing Jim talk, and I don't want to have this awkward moment of Jim being like, Siobhan, can we please wrap this up? My gosh, it's been an hour and a half or 2 hours. Great stuff. I mean, honestly, this is the perfect live stream for me, because we covered a lot of really base level questions for someone who is totally brand new to this. But now with all the audience Q&A, we've got industry professionals asking really in-depth questions. And for a student who is trying to learn about this for the first time, there's so much to learn, even just from the questions and from the answers. So thank you guys so much. We're going to try to wrap this up pretty soon. Just a couple more questions that came in. Christabel asks, currently in automation, every company has their own software and communication protocols. Do you think it would be beneficial to create a standard like DMX in lighting, but one for automation?
Yes and no. Again, this comes from a nothing is really made for us as an industry. DMX is a great example of the lights are like some of the only products that are made exclusively for the entertainment industry. And so the industry came together and made a standard, DMX, right? In the case of automation, we piggyback on, Navigator certainly does, and everyone does, we piggyback on the industrial automation protocols. So I think the better way to put this, Christabel, if you would allow me to, is that every company has its own interface, which is true. But on the back end, we're all speaking a lot of the same language: CAN bus and Profinet and Ethernet. EtherCon. I don't know. All these different protocols that exist as automation, as industrial automation protocols. So really, it's about how you're tying that in your software. I'm for standardization, certainly, if it could exist, but the real issue here is that the different industrial automation companies keep moving at different paces from each other. And a lot of the RFQs, the RFPs, requests for proposals, that come out from various entertainment organizations, EtherCat, thank you, Luke. The RFPs that come out dictate what standard they want to get met. And, usually it's the newest, shiniest, fanciest, safest. Whether it is safest or not, it is the newest advancement in safety, recognizing those can be different things. And so then all of a sudden your industry-wide standard that maybe doesn't have a way to talk to that new protocol, well, what are we going to do about it, right? So it's a little bit of the Wild West, but that's because we as an industry use all the protocols as we see fit.
Great question. Todd asks, what will be the most effective way for performer flying operators to jump back into a job once shows start reopening? Should there be a retraining procedure in place after such a long time away from a console? That just makes me think of onboarding training.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. And like, I happen to know this is something that Cirque du Soleil has been focusing on for a long time. Once it became clear that it wasn't going to be just a couple weeks, that like they were going to be really shut down, was, okay, man, we had this like boulder rolling downhill and it's come to a stop now. How do we get the boulder rolling again? And so a huge part of it is the training is getting back into the show. And before you start hitting the first day everybody gets back, the first cue probably shouldn't be a performer flying cue, hitting that go button and dragging someone up into the air on something really dynamic. So yeah, and I think it's on all of us as operators, as we always have to be, to represent the safety of the artist and the safety of the system. And if we're not ready, if we need one more training period with a sandbag to feel comfortable again, then we should be demanding that, right? We're sitting there with the e-stop button. If we push that button down, nothing's moving. So that's a lot of leverage. Now, it doesn't mean we should be jerks about it, but at the same time, we shouldn't let ourselves get railroaded into something we know is unsafe. So that would be my advice, is to demand the training that you need before you start getting back into the hyper complicated interdependent systems that exist.
Absolutely. This is in reference to an earlier question. The stage manager cues the window. The operator assures a safe takeoff. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
That would. I think that's what I would advocate for in a vacuum. Obviously, it depends situation to situation. Back in the day when we used to fly people on a joystick live, I would take my headset off. This was on Kuza. I would take my headset off because I didn't, even if somebody was just messing around, or I didn't want to hear any of it. I wanted to just focus. So again, it's all circumstantial. It depends, but that would be where I would start from for sure.
So I have a question. How do you prevent the 3D flight rig from ripping pink in half?
Excellent question. So, what we're talking about here is there's four, well, at least three, and then as many as you want. In Pink's case, it's four lines coming together to a center point where Pink is in the twisty belt, and we fly her around. Frankly, it's really advanced software that is watching the position of all the lines and how much tension is in the lines, and we're ensuring that we don't get to a point where we could exceed the working load of the twisty belt itself. And some of that started as a software only situation. And now you're seeing more and more advanced pieces of hardware like safety encoders that help us pass a robust hazard analysis, risk assessment process through and feel really confident in what we're doing and that it's safe and repeatable.
Good. I just can't even imagine having software that's not that advanced, and one winch is, when like the system thinks in space, an object is not where it actually is. I would hate to have that issue during that performer flying rig.
Precisely. And so you need a system that's advanced enough to be looking at each machine individually and to understand that those, in Pink's case, 4 machines are operating as a single machine in this moment. And that's a big part of it. And then, to make it even more complicated, you can go to YouTube and you can search like Pink Wembley Stadium, and you can see a lot of great cell phone footage of us flying Pink around on 4 lines and flying a camera around, chasing her while she's flying around. So now you've got a camera that's pretty close to her. And so now you've got 4 winches for her, 4 winches for the camera, each thinking about itself, each thinking about its system, and then how those 2 systems are interacting with each other. You need some advanced software to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a great question, follow-up question. What if there is a 0.5 to 0.25 time delay for any of the 4 winches? I guess, how do you mitigate that?
Again, it's about the way your system is designed on a controls level, and that if that were to happen, if you were to hit the go button and one winch didn't react for a quarter second or a half second, the whole queue would stop. At least as we use it with Navigator, that's an unacceptable window. We're talking about milliseconds here. We're not talking about We're not talking about reasonable fractions of seconds in this case. As when I introduce performers that certainly have never been on an automated system before, I'll usually take them by a winch and show them it and explain it at a 30,000 foot level. And among the things I say is there are dozens of sensors on this machine that are reporting back to Navigator thousands of times a second. So it's actually very difficult to make these machines move at all. So if the machines are moving, thousands of things are going right, hundreds of things are going right thousands of times every second. And if any of those is a question mark, we stop, right? The one of the big things that I've been propagating lately is the show must go on is a common turn of phrase in our industry, and that is ridiculous. The show must not go on. That is not what is important. What is important is that everyone gets to go home under their own power at the end of the day, because all we're doing is telling stories here, and I don't know about you, but most of them aren't even that good. Okay. So there's no reason to send somebody home under not their own power because we said the show must go on. Hit the stop button, pick it, let's go back or let's skip ahead, and everybody goes home. That's
all about that. All about that safety sandbox.
The safe sandbox, yes.
So here, one last question. This is the final question. How do you handle the over expectations of directors or producers who want to push the boundaries of the system you are using? Great question.
I talk about this in the book, but I firmly believe in under promising and over delivering. So this goes back to that conversation we were having way early on about it's better to have a difficult conversation in the future tense than in the present tense about what a system can do. So I really work hard to make sure we're communicating about what the system can do. And I am even communicating about what the system can do. And I'm cutting it in I'm making it up 5% from what we think it actually can do. And in that case, you're under promising and then you're over delivering. Nobody ever got yelled at for showing up with a performer fly rig that could do more than what you told everybody it could do. Everyone has always gotten yelled at for doing the opposite.
Absolutely.
So, it's about getting ahead of it, Ken, really is the answer.
Yeah, about getting ahead of it, about expectations, and about communicating really well. Yeah, all excellent points. Well, I'm going to start wrapping it up here. So stick around for just a moment or two. I do have some very exciting things to share. Jim, where can people follow you on social media?
Pretty boring overall. I'm Jim Shumway on Facebook and Jim Shumway on LinkedIn and _Jim Shumway on Instagram. So yeah, really, if you type Jim Shumway into one of them, that's probably the quickest way.
Yeah. And do you have any last minute words or calls to action for our explorers?
Be curious, the two things I look for when I hire people are attitude and aptitude. As I like to joke about rigging, I can teach anybody how a shackle works, but I want somebody that wants to learn and wants to be here. So I'm looking for attitude and aptitude. I'm looking for people that are curious, that want to know more, ask questions, ask why, right? Again, to me, understanding why is more important than understanding what. The college kids often ask me like, oh man, like what's your one piece of advice? My piece of advice is just impress everybody you ever meet. I realize that's a very flippant thing to say, but if you just show up to work every day and you work hard, people will notice that, and that will take you further than any piece of paper from any educational institution. Show up, work hard, want to be there, and you will go far. How far, I cannot say.
Yeah, absolutely. And impress people with aptitude and attitude. We want people with a good attitude. We want people to take ownership of their mistakes, people who are going to, take constructive criticism, etc., etc. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. This really meant a lot to me. This is so much fun. I really love all the comments that came in, people tuning in from all over the world. Very exciting. So please subscribe to Industry Explorers. This is all about telling people how to enter certain industries, and we explore all industries. I like to think I'm a culmination of Mike Rowe and Disney smushed into like a really hot young female, right? Excuse me while I toot my own horn real quick. Yeah, and humble. Oh, by the way, be humble when you're trying to get a job.
That's good advice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So please subscribe to Industry Explorers if you want to see more. If you know of someone, a friend, family member who are interested in a certain industry, DM me. Let me know what you want to see. I'm happy to provide, do more of these interviews. And yeah, so really exciting thing here. We are now over 100 subscribers with Industry Explorers on YouTube. Very, very exciting. And if you give us a like and a follow on any social media platform that you prefer, keep an eye out for a giveaway. I'm celebrating our 100 subscribers, and I'm going to give away something big, something we may or may not have talked about at some point during this live stream. So follow Industry Explorers. Keep an eye out for that giveaway. Thank you guys for your support. Thank you guys for your excellent questions. Thank you guys for tuning in. And check out our other videos. Send me a DM. Let me know what you want to see. Go buy Jim's book. It is the book on performer flying, and it is an excellent resource. So until next time, guys, I'll see you on our next adventure. Take care, everybody.